What's going on? This is your man John Fortune, your host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. And today's show is about veteran minicamp that's going to be starting this week. So we got veteran minicamp. We got the veteran minicamp on the Tuesday, July the 4th, and July 25th is full training camp that's going to be happening down in Richmond. So there's some things that we have to see with this upcoming veteran minicamp, and also with the upcoming training camp that's going to make us feel a little bit more comfortable about where the Redskins are going to be, what the season is going to be like for the Redskins. So here's a couple of things that I wrote down that I feel are things that we need to see when it comes down to what's going to happen, what we expect to see from this veteran minicamp. So the first thing I got written down is Dwayne Haskins going to be our day one starter? Now, just to start things off, our rookies around the league have been talked about a lot this season, which is something that's making me excited as a fan. But also, it seems to me that a lot of people are now paying attention to us when it comes to who we drafted and what is going to be out there when it comes to what the Redskins are going to put on the field. So, like I said, again, the first thing is Dwayne Haskins going to be our day one starter? So from the voluntary minicamp and the OTAs, the one thing that has been apparent was that everybody has been talking about Dwayne Haskins' arm strength. And this guy has been doing an excellent job with throwing the ball deep, getting the ball out of his hands and things like that. The downside that they're talking about is that he's holding on to the ball too long. Now, again, I don't know if this is one of those situations where it's because they're not really rushing or they're not really full pad working out all like that. And it's just looking like he's not quick with his release and things like that. But we'll find out as this minicamp goes on, because this is going to be the minicamp where all the veterans are there. You're going to see Josh Norman there. You're going to get Mason Foster there. Trent's going to be back. Morgan Moses, I think he may be back. We're going to get a lot of the veteran presence there this camp. So I can't wait to see that. For number 2, I have, is Montez Sweat ready to be dominant on this defensive line? Now, the reason I got this at number 2 is because there are a few things that needs to be expressed about what Montez Sweat is joining and what we kind of expect for him to bring to this defensive lineup. So just to give y'all an idea, the first thing I want to put out there is that Jalen last year had 8 sacks. So, I mean, I didn't even know he had 8 sacks, but the fact that he had 8 sacks is incredible. Daron Payne had 5 sacks last year. I do remember how a lot of those sacks that he did get. I just don't know with Jonathan Allen. I didn't know he got that many sacks in the season. Matt Ioannidis had 7.5 sacks. Again, it's very impressive that you're talking about our interior linemen at Jonathan Allen 8 sacks, Daron Payne at 5 sacks, and Matt Ioannidis at 7.5 sacks. You're talking about that's 20.5 sacks between 3 defensive linemen, 3 interior defensive linemen. So, I mean, that is really impressive. And then Ryan Kerrigan had 13 sacks on his own. So, again, we have to find out, what does Montez Sweat bring to this? Is he going to bring Preston Smith's 4 measly sacks? Or is he actually going to bring more of an 11 sack thing, or maybe even a 12 sack situation? We're going to really find out, because not only that, Trent comes back. So for the first time, Montez Sweat will be going up against a Pro Bowl tackle that is nasty when it comes to blocking people. So we're going to really see, because the reports that have been coming out of camp has been that Montez Sweat has been dominating these guys. He's a fierce competitor and everything like that. Now we're going to see how fierce is he against another guy who's just as fierce of a competitor as he is. Number 3, who replaces Reuben Foster? Now, we know Sean Deion Hamilton is going to be the other starter. Now we got to see who's going to play beside him. Now we got Mason Foster, we got Cole Holcomb, we got Josh Harvey-Clemons, and we also got John Bostic. Now, I hope it's John Bostic. The only reason why I say that is because John Bostic played behind another great defensive line in Pittsburgh. So, being as though he had a multitude of tackles last year, I think that he would be a really good substitute for Reuben Foster. Now, he's not that solid when it comes to passing and stuff, but I think to some of the passing plays and covering tight ends. But I think that if we sit up there and you really pay attention to how good he could possibly be behind this three-line setup, along with Ryan Kerrigan, and if Montez Sweat does make an immediate impact, we're talking about, you could probably see this defensive line be probably the most dominant defensive line that the Redskins have seen in a very long time. I think the last time we had like a really, really dominant defensive line was maybe that 92 team, that 91 Super Bowl team, where, I mean, they just had a nasty defensive line. So we'll see about that. Number 4, I have, number 4, I have, can McLaurin and Harmon be the starters at wide receiver? Now, again, this is where we have to find out, because when you think about the production that our starting wide receivers had last year, where Paul Richardson played 7 games, he got injured, I understand that, but before he got injured, he only had 262 yards, and you're talking about he played 7 games. He only had 2 touchdowns. Josh Doctson, 15 games, he had 532 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, again, I talk about how when you see other teams and the production they get from their receivers, we're talking about their receivers see on the average about 1,500 yards and more when it comes to some of the top wide receivers in the league. And we're nowhere near that. Not only that, even when it comes to the touchdown totals, you're talking about some of the top wide receivers, they're seeing about 10 touchdowns, even 12, 15 touchdowns a season. And you're talking about pretty much Josh Doctson the whole season, he only has 2 touchdowns, and you're talking about 532 yards. So, I mean, yeah, we had issues at quarterback, but, I mean, you know, when you think about it, Alex Smith was there for 10 games. We had Alex Smith for 10 whole games, and Josh Doctson just wasn't catching anything. I mean, even when you think about his reception total, I mean, he was targeted 84 times, and of that 84, no, he was targeted 78 times, and of those times he only had 44 catches, which means that he's missing like 30 something catches a game. Or, I mean, yeah, there's times where he might be overthrown, but you're still talking about, say that's probably like overthrown maybe 10 times. That still don't account for the other 20 something receptions that he's still not catching. So we really need to find out if Harmon and McLaurin can actually be those guys to actually take on this wide receiver task and actually produce a little bit more. If these guys come in and they get around 500 yards or 600 yards receiving, to me, I feel that they've already outperformed Paul Richardson and Josh Doctson, who's been in the league longer than they have. So that's another thing. Number 5, I have, has the secondary improved? Now, I told people that I love the guy Jimmy Moreland. I got to see a lot of James Madison games because in this area where I'm from, right here in DC, we get to see a lot of those James Madison games. So Jimmy Moreland, even then, was like looking amazing. These OTAs, he looked even more dangerous. I mean, the guy was just everywhere when it came to the balls and everything, even to the point at where he made Dwayne Haskins question a throw that he had because of the fact that McLaurin tipped the ball and somehow, some way, Jimmy Moreland was just there to catch the ball and run it back. So, I mean, we got that. We also got Landon Collins. You know, he's coming from the Giants. We got to see what we getting out of him, because when you think about the guy he's replacing, a guy who had 4 interceptions, like 10 passes defense. He had 3 fumble recoveries, and he also had a pick for a touchdown. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think that he's going to far exceed the production that DJ Swearinger had, but we got to see what he does. Josh Norman is coming back. A guy that I thought that we should have cut so we could have some more money to go out there and go for somebody else. We got to see what happens with this guy. Montez Nicholson. We're not even really sure what we got in him initially, because 1, he's been injured, and then 2, he was out pretty much the whole season, and then he has what could possibly be a suspension coming on to him. So we still don't know what we're getting out of that. So when you think about Jimmy Moreland, Landon Collins, and Josh Norman, that's about the extent of our secondary. We're still not sure what's going on with Quentin Dunbar. We're not sure if he's fully healed from that nerve injury. So we got to find out what's going on there. 6. My last and final one is number 6. And it's the question I have here is Darius Geis ready to take the reins of this running back position? Now, we're talking about the possibility of him replacing Adrian Peterson. Now, just to give y'all understanding, Adrian Peterson had 1,042 rushing yards last year. He also had about 200 and something receiving yards last year. So altogether, he had about maybe 1,300 yards, all-purpose yards altogether. But he also had 8 touchdowns, 7 rushing, and 1 receiving. So we got to find out if Geis can replace that production that we got out of Adrian Peterson in 1 year. And not only that, at 30-something years old. So we got to really find out what's going on there, because when you think about it, our next productive running back was Capri Bibbs, who had 4 touchdowns and 1 he had 3 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown. So we're really in a situation where we got to find out all these things that's going on, because that's going to really give us a gauge on how our season will map out. Because I'm going to do the schedule to let you guys know what I think our team is going to do, where they might finish, what's happening. Even when it comes to the possibility of Case starting versus Dwayne starting, I'm also going to put that into play after we see this, what happens in this training camp. In this veteran minicamp. So my name is John Fortune, and this has been the Frustrated Fan Sports Show.